Hello and welcome to Let's Review. You know, for some reason it feels like a long time since I've actually done a review on this show. Whatever the case. Patreon-funded review time again. So this one was requested by Lee Maths, as of our previous two Patreon-funded reviews. And this time he asked for Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc, a game that originally came out on the PSP in Japan and the PS Vita in the West. And now it's been ported to PC. So the question is, how well does it fare? Well, to answer that, we start as we always do, with the gameplay. Gameplay-wise, Danganronpa is a fairly standard visual novel, although it does have a few things that spice it up, starting with the exploration system.
This is the main gameplay screen of Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc. So this is one of the rooms that we often find ourselves in. This is actually our bedroom. And we can look around and look at various things. So for example, I can examine this lint roller and it'll just give me a little bit of flavor text relating to it. I can also hit tab to show everything that I can interact with, but you know, there's nothing particularly interesting in this room. So I can also exit the room. And what this allows me to do is just explore the school and wander around. So this is one of the quote-unquote free time segments. During these you can go pretty much wherever you want and just have a chat with one of the other students for a bit. And that can help you unlock various perks and abilities to be used later. So if I just bring up the little mini-map, this is the area around us, so the various rooms. So if I look there, that was Junko's room, Celeste's room, and so on and so forth. You know, so each of the characters has their own room. Then you have, for example, the rubbish room. So if I go in here, and you can't tend to wander around these rooms. It tends to be much like the previous room. You'll have a fixed view, and you can rotate around and have a look. So for example, if I wanted to look at, say, that, I just click on it, and again, little bits of flavor text. Occasionally, with those, you'll actually find coins that will allow you to buy gifts that you can give to people, which will help boost your relationship with them. And again, I can sprint to move a little bit faster, and there's no sort of stamina meter or anything like that. Sometimes there are rooms like this bathhouse, for example, where you can actually go through the changing room into the actual bathroom and further into the steam room, but you don't really need to see that. There's also areas like this which allow me to transition to other parts of the school. So for example, here we have a couple of classrooms. We have the creepy door behind which Monokuma lies, and we have the storehouse, and here we have the actual quote-unquote exit of the school, which, as you can see, looks kinda sinister. So we can't go that way. And fundamentally, that's sort of it to the exploration mechanic. However, it is worth noting there is a map you can open up, and you can fast travel around if you want, and the map will also tell you where people are. So at the moment, because I'm now pretty late in the game, most people are on either the 5th floor, or in this case, they're sort of hanging out around the dormitories. In fact, I'll actually go to a location where I know there is somebody, just so I can show you people. That just demonstrates a fast travel mechanic, and we're back here. In here you will see one of the people at the school. And she in here. Was she in? Oh no, I think she was in the supply room. Oh well. Helps if I actually pay attention to where people are when I'm demonstrating, doesn't it? So we'll leave the bathroom. Leave the changing room. Yeah, she was in here. So yeah, so yeah, background comes in, and in addition, and you will note that Hina here is very clearly a 2D character model, and all of the characters are done this way, rather than being 3D models. So if we wanted, we could interact with her, spend a little time with her, and maybe unlock some abilities. If I just go into the report card. The report card shows information on everybody, so for example, he's one of the characters. And yeah, we have his name, his height, his weight, and his special ability, so he was the ultimate affluent prodigy. And because I've talked to him a little bit, I've gained the cool and composed skill, and all of these come into play during the class trial minigames. And fundamentally, that's kind of it. I'll briefly mention presents because these are things that you can give to people to boost your relationship with them. And boosting your relationship unlocks more skills and more skill points. But fundamentally, that really is it for the actual exploration gameplay of Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc.
This mechanic works fine for what it is. It's nice to get a chance to actually explore the school, figure out the layout of the place, and the fact that it opens up slowly as the game goes on actually works really well for it. With that said, it can be a little bit linear in terms of the actual progression, but that's more of an issue with the story rather than the gameplay. What I will say is that there are other elements to the game. In specifics, they all take place during the class trial sections. And I'm not actually going to show those to you. The simple reason for that is I can't find any examples that don't contain significant spoilers, which I do try to avoid in these reviews. All I will say about them is that they are a bunch of fairly functional, if not terribly interesting minigames. So I'll be honest, this game doesn't really sell itself on its gameplay. So that naturally means we need to talk more about the story. Danganronpa is set in a school, but not just any school, the so-called Ultimate School, Hope's Peak Academy, a place where the best and brightest of the youth are gathered together. Every one of them is a so-called ultimate student, the ultimate baseball star, the ultimate biker gang leader, the ultimate fan fiction writer. The best and brightest, Hey now, don't go dissing fan fiction writers. Unfortunately for those attending the school, things don't exactly go as they expect. Within minutes of arrival, each of them is rendered unconscious, and they awake to find themselves in a twisted parody version of the school. All of the windows have had metal plates bolted over them, and all of the doors to the exterior have been locked, with the exception of the main door that's been replaced with something that looks more like it should belong in a bank vault rather than a school. They also find that the place is now ruled over by a psychotic teddy bear. Is this going to be one of those games where we just have to hold up our hands and say, Japan? Probably, yeah. The bear is named Monokuma, and, well, frankly, he looks like Two-Face's favourite teddy bear. He claims that he's taken over the school, and that none of the students will ever be allowed to leave. Not unless they commit murder. And get away with it. Well, that is certainly, quirky. Tell me about it. The rules of this school are actually fairly simple. If someone commits murder, they become blackened. After a short amount of time, there is a class trial, where the people there attempt to determine the identity of the blackened. If they get it right, that person is executed. If they get it wrong, that person gets to leave, and everyone else gets executed. That's somewhat interesting. Teaching a mindset rather than a specific set of skills. The traits of a person who could commit murder and get away with it. That was my assumption as well. Honestly, these trials are the best thing the game has going for it, for the simple reason that I'm a sucker for a good mystery. It's actually really interesting puzzling out the solutions to these things, and they range from a simple stabbing in the shower to an over-elaborate scheme involving a very silly costume. Honestly, this was definitely the high point, figuring out who did it, why, and how. But it does also lead into the game's main issue. Which is? Aggressive linearity. It's also a problem that, while every single mystery is extremely well crafted, I can't see myself wanting to replay this game now that I've already solved the cases. It's the same reason I almost never rewatch mystery films or reread mystery books unless a long time's passed and I've forgotten most of it. It's just not as much fun to solve it again. Is there not still enjoyment to be gained from, say, the characters in the story? Oh, there is, and some of the characters are very well written. The problem is that a lot of them are very, very quirky, and I think they lean a little too heavily on those quirks. You have the fanfiction writer who loudly declares his love for 2D smut. You have the martial artist who turns out to be a very gentle giant. And you have the spiritualist who, Frankly, he's so stupid I'm amazed he manages to walk and breathe at the same time. A lot of these characters needed a lot more depth, and that's especially true of those who die very early in the game before we actually have a chance to really get to know them. And those who do survive much of the game? Those are better, but more would have been nice, I think. Though, if I'm honest, I'm nitpicking now. Danganronpa is a really excellent murder mystery game, for the simple reason that the mysteries themselves are excellent. Each one of them has a very unexpected solution, but one that you can still puzzle out if you pay attention to enough of the clues and enough of the very tiny little details. One case actually turns on a misused pronoun, and frankly, I have great respect for anyone who spotted that the first time round. But if you missed it, then how exactly did you solve the case? That's kind of one of the other issues. The trials themselves are extremely hand-holdy. Even if you figure out immediately who the killer is, you've still got to go through all the motions and puzzle it out piece by piece. Which is actually kind of useful if you've only got part of it or you haven't figured it out at all. Honestly, it's give and take. I'd have liked a little bit more freedom, but honestly, the way it's done here is pretty good and pretty enjoyable. And as such, although there's a few bits and pieces I wish it had, in particular a lot less linearity and the chance to actually puzzle things out yourself a little bit more during the trials, and have multiple solutions to get to the right answer, I think overall I'm perfectly happy to say that I like the story. From a graphics standpoint, this game is not exactly impressive, but given that it originally came out on the PSP, I'm more than willing to cut it a little bit of slack. It's also, for the record, a pretty decent port. It runs at a very constant 60 frames per second, and I didn't notice any significant bugs or glitches or even too many graphical problems, bar this one flickering camera at one point, but that was a minor issue that I didn't notice until I reviewed the footage. Overall, though, it's a pretty decent port. There's a few things I would have liked to have seen, more graphics options for example, and mouse control on menus, but honestly there was nothing that distracted from the experience, so overall, pretty decent job on the graphics. The art is pretty good for the most part. All of the characters look very unique and interesting, although they are fairly over the top in a very anime style, but if that's your kind of thing, you'll like it here. The backgrounds, on the other hand, are not particularly great, but that's largely because they're not pre-rendered and thus suffer from the limitations of the rest of the game's graphics. It's also worth noting that blood in this game is bright pink rather than red. This, I suspect, was a stylized choice to avoid getting a higher age rating, but honestly it kind of works for this game, although it does detract a little bit from the horror of the actual murder scenes. Overall, though, I think I'm comfortable saying that for the most part, I like the art. The music for this game is okay. I'm not going to say I dislike it, but it's not particularly great either. In particular, I think there needed to be a lot more of it given this game's running time. You'll hear the same tracks over and over again and they might start to get a little annoying after a while. Weirdly, that's also kind of true for the voice acting. This game is intermittently voiced. All of the class trials are fully voiced, but most of the rest of the game has only a flavour line of dialogue and then the text of what they actually said. And as I've said before, I'm not a fan of this half and half kind of voice acting. I'd rather have all or nothing. So what I will say is that I genuinely quite like the voice acting here, but there did need to be more of it. It needed to cover the entire game, not just the class trials. So overall, I think for both the music and the voice acting, I can safely say they're fine, but there needed to be more of them. So, did I enjoy Danganronpa Trigger Happy Havoc? Yeah, I did. Should you buy it? This one's going to depend very much on your personal enjoyment of mystery stories. If you're like me and you have a fondness for murder mysteries, there's a lot to enjoy here. The mysteries themselves are very good, very interesting, but probably not terribly replayable. And ultimately, I think that's this game's biggest problem. While I've enjoyed it, I don't see it having much of a shelf life past its initial run-through. But honestly, if that's not an issue for you, go ahead and give it a go. If it is, it's definitely worth picking up in a sale. At the end of the day, I enjoyed it for what it is, even if I probably won't replay it again in the future. There is incidentally a sequel to this game, and yes, I will probably cover that at some point in the future. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a job I need Martin to do. I will see you later. So, what exactly do you need me to do? I've been thinking. Given how easily Vanessa managed to get past our defences, I don't think it's safe to keep this here anymore. While I don't exactly disagree with your assessment, I'm still not entirely certain what you wish me to do. Take it, hide it. Hell, take Starlight too. I want to beef up the defences here. That way, with any luck, anything that comes looking for that will be looking in the wrong place. I'm assuming you can set something up that'll let us know if it's disturbed. Quite easily, in fact. In fact, if you want, I could go right now. Will you be wanting to know where I hide them? No, it's safer if I don't. So you're passing the buck to me, then? Only if you think you can handle it. Oh, I can. I'm glad that you trust me that much. Go on. Get going before you make me tear up, you big softy. I'll be back in a few days. It'll take me that long to build up suitable defences. Don't do anything too foolish while I'm gone. I won't. See you when you get back. Now, what's on the review docket? Oh no. Oh no. Oh God. Booze. Gonna need lots and lots of booze.